The Laguna watershed has played an important role in Santa Barbara for millennia. The low-lying area at the base of the watershed was called the estero, or estuary, by early Spanish settlers. This estuary was a prime source of food for residents back to the native Chumash. As Santa Barbara grew, this swampy area was even used as a dump. But the low-lying estero was prone to flooding, and over time the watershed's land became valued more for development than for food or waste disposal. Gates and pumps were installed at the creek mouth to cut off the tidal influence, and much of the rest of the watershed was put in pipes.
You can't build a house on top of a creek, or it takes a lot of engineering to do so, so it's a lot easier to just get that land, cover it with a pipe, and you can build things on top of it, like streets, houses.
The result of all the ensuing development and piping is a nearly invisible watershed.
Laguna watershed is by far our most developed watershed in the city. And there are parts of other watersheds, like Mission Creek, for example, that have pockets that are just as developed. But the entire Laguna watershed is highly paved, highly urbanized. Also, with Laguna Channel watershed, there's just such a short section of natural or semi-natural creek channel. Almost the entire watershed and the runoff and all of the former drainages are piped underground, and so almost the entire network is within the storm drains. And so what we get with is during a rain event, there's no dilution with clean water from the upper watershed. And so it just creates a really different situation in the creek.
Without that dilution, when it rains, runoff pollution is more concentrated as it's conveyed on the impervious backs of streets and sidewalks into all those pipes leading directly to the ocean.
And what we find when we examine the results from all of our watershed testing is that Laguna watershed and Laguna Channel do have the highest concentrations of pollutants during storm events, during dry periods, and in the sediments. This really impacts the organisms, the aquatic organisms that are living in the creek, because they're exposed to higher concentrations, these pulses during storm events that are known to be really hard on aquatic organisms.
You have a lot of waste that gets deposited on the surfaces, like animal waste, people waste, litter, even the things we built, asphalt shingles, asphalt roads. And so a lot of pollutants are associated with this impervious area that we've built up in the watershed.
To demonstrate the benefits of permeability and chip away at the pollution problems associated with impervious surfaces, in 2011 the Creeks Division began installing permeable paver projects around the city. The projects included parking lots, sidewalks, even an alley. But the largest and most ambitious undertaking occurred in the Laguna watershed, with the conversion of road and sidewalks of 2 blocks of Quarantina Street in 2016.
So we are effectively letting that water that used to fall under the ground and soak in do that again, while still being able to use the street as a street, and sidewalks as sidewalks, driveways as driveways, etc. That allows for the treatment of that water through those bioprocesses. It allows for raising of the ground table so that plants can use it, so that the water is available for creek flows during the dry season.
The demonstration projects coincided with new state and federal regulations requiring all new development to handle stormwater differently than in the past. To meet the new standards, the city's stormwater management program lays out best management practices for development that is tiered according to a project's size and scope.
Generally, the highest tier, you're basically required to capture and retain and treat the volume of water from a 1-inch storm in 24 hours. So that's what we really designed these projects around. As more and more parcels are built to accommodate that 1-inch and 24-hour storm, then you get a cumulative effect of improving water quality in the entire watershed.
And while most of the Laguna watershed is built out, on occasion there are opportunities to restore areas to conditions closer to what they would be naturally. Take, for instance, this place, next to El Estero Wastewater Treatment Plant, affectionately known as Turtle Park.
This is a parcel that has been recently restored to improve wetland function and also habitat for the southwestern pond turtle. The project came about when the city acquired the property in 1999, and with the idea that the city would use this as part of the El Estero operations. However, wetlands were discovered on site, and the city has now restored this site, all 1.19 acres of wetland habitat.
Right next to the Turtle Park site, the Parker Waterfront Hotel development is doing a similar project, remediating soil contamination and restoring habitat.
The idea is to have a contiguous kind of restoration site. So that's one thing that we have done, is work with them together to make sure that the two sites are compatible habitat-wise. This would be, once it's fully restored, an ideal habitat for southwestern pond turtle, where they could migrate up the corridor and come back and forth.
Experts say the future of built-out, highly urbanized watersheds like the Laguna watershed depends upon projects like these that return permeability and restore habitat one parcel at a time.
Slowly over time, we will be reducing the runoff rates, and we will be reducing the pollutant loads coming off of this watershed into Laguna Channel. It is a slow process, but I think in 50 years, when we see that, as soon as it starts raining, the gutters are almost full, I think that will change during small to medium rainstorms.